Hey mamas, welcome to Breastfeeding Relief with Bethany. We share incredible stories, tips, and breastfeeding ideas to help on your journey. I'm your host, Bethany Laverne, a lactation consultant and speech therapist who helps mamas with breastfeeding. Not all breastfeeding stories are the same, and we dive into those topics. Welcome to Breastfeeding Relief with Bethany. Today I have Jazman. She's a certified fertility health coach and birth doula. We are so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bethany. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your company and why you started it?
Yes, so I am Jazman and I am the founder of Eden's Nurturary. And I started it originally as a birth doula practice. I have been passionate about birth since I was about 5 years old. And I knew when I grew up, I wanted to help mamas have babies. And so I just pursued that in all of my work. And then one day I felt like God had called me into birth work. And so I left my previous career and I decided to pursue supporting moms through birth because I had, in my previous work, I worked as a clinical psychologist intern and I heard a lot of trauma stories about birth that the moms went through. And so I thought to myself, like, how can I help support moms before they get to this point where they have a traumatic birth? And so that's when I thought doula work is preventative work. And so I got called into that work. And then as I became more in tune with my journey to conceive children, me and my husband's journey, and more courageous in sharing about our journey, I felt the Lord calling me to do fertility work. And so I've been transitioning my business to mostly working with couples who are struggling to conceive and overcome infertility because of our journey.
Gosh, I love that so much. So I've talked about it maybe a little bit on this podcast. Usually we talk about breastfeeding, but we're going to take a break today and talk about infertility. It is something not talked about, and it's 1 in 7 women struggle with infertility. So someone you know is struggling infertility, and usually we suffer in silence. I know I did for a very long time. I didn't want people to know, and I was so embarrassed by it because I just felt like all my friends, like it was so easy. And I felt like when I would finally share with someone, then that friend would come back and go, guess what? I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh, that's not the way you should tell me. Like,
Yeah.
and you got to be like super duper happy. And then you go home and you cry your eyes out because you're like,
Yes.
why her and not me? Like, I've been trying for years. So I
Yes.
appreciate the work you're doing because it is just not talked about enough. So today, let's jump into that. So for me personally, we were just diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which means I have no idea,
Right.
which I think is so hard. I feel like sometimes if you
Yeah.
had a better diagnosis of like, it's this or that, I felt like we had to do a lot of trials and error just
Yeah.
because we're like, I don't know what's going on with you.
Yes, I would agree. I feel like sometimes that's the harder diagnosis because you literally do not know what's happening and what's going on. And I feel like sometimes if you have a diagnosis, you at least can formulate a plan of attack more clearly
Mhm.
than when you don't.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I know for maybe some newer moms that have found the podcast or even going through maybe secondary infertility, like some of the steps we go through, I feel like even family members didn't understand what we were going through. So, we kind of wanted to share that with you guys today. So, for us personally, you're supposed to try for 1 year before trying to get pregnant or trying to get pregnant before they will do anything like run tests, try to
Right.
help you unless you're, I believe it's geriatric age, which is
Mhm.
35, which I hate saying.
I hate that too so much.
Yeah. So, because I am officially geriatric, everyone, which is awful
Same.
to say. So, they did some tests and they were like, well, we don't know, but let's try Clomid. So Clomid's just a medication. It's a pill that you take. I think it was for 7 days that we took it. And then at the end of it, you get your ovary scan to see how many eggs you have, maybe how many you'll drop, if it's safe to continue or not. That's sometimes how we get those multiple births. And then that we didn't get pregnant at all through that. So then they said, well, you need to go see a fertility specialist. They ran us through a ton of blood work, a ton of tests. And from there, actually, I was told, oh my gosh, your progesterone level's so high. This isn't why you're getting pregnant, because you have a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So they said, we need a scan done right away. And so that next week I went and got a scan done with contrast. So I had to have an IV. It came back, you don't have a brain tumor, which thank God I didn't have a brain tumor. It was such a blessing, but it still didn't explain why that level was so high. So then they put me on medicine to bring it down because they couldn't figure out why. And so then they said, well, you're young, you're healthy. There's nothing wrong with your husband. All of his swimmers look great. They're swimming the way they're supposed to be, all the beautiful things. He's got millions of them. Those are some things they look at. And so next was an IUI. And so that's intrauterine insemination. And so again, they give you medicines. This time it was in shots. I think I got about 2 shots a day. And then they take his sperm, they clean it, they take out all the dead ones, and then they inject it into you when you're going to ovulate. So we did 5 rounds of that. We got pregnant once. It was a chemical ectopic pregnancy. So the baby was stuck in my tube. And so clearly that wouldn't lead to a baby, but I was thankful that I caught it soon enough. And this is why I say, mamas, advocate for yourself. Because I said there is something wrong. And they were like, well, it's a Friday. And if you feel like something's really wrong, we're only open till noon. Just go to the emergency room. I said, what's the emergency room going to do for me? Like, are they actually going to scan me? Like, that's not where you go for fertility, is to the emergency room. That's where I go for my broken arm, my concussion, right? Exactly. So I was like, no, I'm fine. So I just kept having this pain. They were like, well, I bet it's like a cyst about to burst. I'm like, you have never once told me I have a cyst, but I could because you're on all of these new medications. So it could happen. So Monday I called again and I said, guys, I'm telling you, there is something wrong. Can I please come in for a scan? There's something wrong. Blood work. I don't care what it is. We need to figure out the problem. So I come in, I go back to work. Cause of course they scan me. They don't see a fetus. They did blood work. I went back to work. I'm almost back to work and I get a phone call. You're pregnant, but you need to come back and get scanned again because we didn't find the baby. And so let's look again. So they scanned, they said, we can't find the baby. They sent me to another OBGYN that they said had better equipment. They also couldn't find the baby. And so they said, yes, you do have an ectopic pregnancy. So I was so thankful we caught it early, because for some moms that don't know, if the pain gets so bad, your tube can actually explode because the baby's growing. And then you have to have emergency surgery, and they usually remove your fallopian tube. So I feel very blessed that did not happen to me. So from there, I wanted to take a break. And my doctor did say, IVF, you'll be pregnant the first time, 100% guarantee.
Oh,
I know, right? So I'm going in hopeful, like, yes, 100% guarantee. Like, we took off Christmas. We started back in January. I was like, yes, this is going to happen. This is my year, right? No, we got pregnant and we lost that baby.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, so of course I'm devastated, but I got pregnant. So I was so excited. And so I was like, okay, let's do it again. So you had to like take off a month to get back in sync. And so we did it again.
Right.
And so I was going to find out like basically right around Mother's Day weekend, which by the way is not a great time to be doing this.
Yeah. That's hard.
Anyways, and we only had 3 embryos that time. And you're supposed to let the embryos cook until day 5 is the best, is when you put them back in you. And so I get a phone call on day 3. You have 1 embryo left. Get in here. We're transferring it today because we don't want there to be no chances and go to day 5 and that not embryo be alive. And I was like, no, I really want to go to day 5. And she was like, get in here. Yeah. It's also one of those things, you've paid so much. You're like, okay, but you want the best odds at the same point. And I said, okay, can we wait until day 5? And then I have a frozen embryo. If that doesn't work, can you put the frozen embryo in? The answer was no, because it's a whole different protocol with the medication. So I get that, but like, it's the point that you're grasping at all the strings.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So anyways, we put in at day 3. That baby did not take. So I said, I'm done with this. Like, it's so emotionally draining, physically draining, because when you start going through IVF, it's 4 to 5 shots a day. At least I was on. And then one of the shots, it is in oil, progesterone in oil, and it's given in basically your butt, like the upper part of your butt, ladies. And so you
Yeah.
get these huge welts and it hurts. So you got to alternate left side, right side, left side, right side. And then they tell you to put heat on it and rub it, but you get these huge knots and it just like hurts to sleep, and don't lay on your back, right?
Yeah.
And so you're just so uncomfortable. I was like, my body just needs a break. And I told my husband, I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I said, respectfully, please don't ask.
Yeah.
I said, I will let you know if I change my mind, but please don't ask me again.
Mm-hmm.
And he did, and he was fine. And then I had my 30th birthday. I melted down and cried because I didn't have a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, let's do it again. I'll try it one more time. And so that's how we got our first son, was on that last chance. And we were supposed to find out the next day. Usually you have to wait 7 days, and then they do a blood test for you. They say, please don't take pregnancy tests, because usually there's not enough of, help me out here. Whatever you're testing to see if you're pregnant.
HCG, yeah.
Thank you. The HCG is supposed to be 1,000. And so if it's not 1,000, it'll be negative. So don't set yourself up for failure, because if you're testing in the first 7 days, usually it's going to be under 1,000. And I was always under 1,000. So I would have never gotten a positive test. But the day before we were supposed to find out, we get a phone call that grandma passed away unexpectedly. And I felt in my heart, we lost grandma and we're going to gain a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And it was true. We actually went to the funeral. I guess it was a little bit before. So it was like the day before we were supposed to find out. We were sitting at the funeral, and I was like, I'm pregnant. I know I'm pregnant. But I was just an emotional wreck, because I started spotting that day too. And of course I said, oh my gosh, I'm losing this baby too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course everyone's like, you're just so upset about grandma, because it wasn't even my grandma. It was my husband's grandma.
Oh, wow.
They're like, it's not even you. And I'm like, but I've been in the family for 10 years. I loved her. And at one point I lived with them for a little bit. And so I was like, I just feel like she's my grandma. Just leave me alone.
Yes, understandably.
Yeah. So, everyone's journey is different, is what I'm trying to say. And some journeys are longer. And of course, we maybe stretch ours out a little bit more, because the money was also a factor. Like, we also had to build up money to pay for this. And so IUIs were cheaper than IVF. So, of course, we're talking about different states here. Some insurance run it. And so, mamas, for you to know, an IUI was around like $5,000 for us, whereas IVF was $20,000 at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's different from state to state, but sometimes you have to take breaks, not because you want to, but because you're trying to build back up that bank account again.
Absolutely. It's very expensive. And like you said, certain states mandate it. And to me, not enough. All states mandate that insurance covers IVF. And then some states only mandate that insurances cover fertility testing to diagnose whether or not you have infertility. And then they don't cover any treatment, so to speak. Even just medications to treat IVF. Some insurances don't cover it, which is really difficult, because then you find yourself in this position. Well, now I have this diagnosis, or I know what's going on, but now I've got to save all this money. Or I've known couples to take out a second mortgage on their homes, or take out loans and go into huge amount of debts to have a baby with not a guarantee that it's going to work.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I know when we were going through this, we were actually in the state of Illinois at the time, who actually has very good
They do.
insurance, actually. And so, but we also were limited to 6 rounds of IVF. So that also was in the back of my head, like, don't use up too many because we really
Right.
want 2 kids. So, if you use up all 6, then we got to come
Yeah.
up with more money, because even though it was quote unquote covered, you still had your out of pocket. And I still felt
Yes.
like we still paid quite a bit. And even you made a good point of, it doesn't cover medications. And I even know with our medications, it was actually shipped to us from Chicago, because you
Wow.
couldn't just go to CVS and get some of these meds. They're so
Yep.
specialty that they would ship it off to a special pharmacy, and then it would come on dry ice. And
Hmm.
usually my phone would ring, like, your medicine's been delivered, like, go get it off your front porch.
Yes. Yep. That's quite common, is to have those specialty ones delivered, because you can't, like you said, just go to your local
Yeah.
pharmacy and get them. And that's pricey too. And making sure they were shipped correctly and making sure they're still cold if they were shipped with ice packs. And so it's a lot that goes into the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, still, like, the pictures I look at, because of course I took a lot of pictures through the whole journey. And just looking at the pictures, like, sitting on my kitchen table some days is just overwhelming. And then
Yeah.
after we did have our son, I had all of our needles. I had saved them all, which I know sounds super silly. But we did one of
Wow.
those pictures with all the needles, like, around his embryo photo. That's how we announced it. Just because I
Oh,
wanted people to understand how
yes.
much we had been through and how much suffering we had. Not that I wanted people to feel bad for us, but it was just
Right.
like, I want people to understand that it's not always easy. And it's also a good conversation starter, that you also get a lot of behind the scenes messages of, hey, we're going through this too. Can I chat?
Yes, I would agree. And I love when couples do that and show the journey, because I feel like there's such this big misconception around IVF. And it's like, oh, you go into the doctors and they do a couple of things and then boom, you have a baby. And it's like, it's not that simple. For some people, it takes months to years to even conceive that baby. And there's a lot of things that go into it, from testing to timing to taking off work, to, like you said, having bruises from all of the shots, the loss of privacy,
Mm.
because you don't get to make your baby in your bedroom, right? With your spouse. You got a whole medical team behind you
Mm-hmm.
trying to make this happen. So there's grief associated with that. Grief associated with, oh, I had always planned to like surprise my husband with this cute little
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy test. And now you can't, because they're involved in every step of the process. So they're going to know whether or not, you
Mm-hmm.
conceived. And so there's so much that goes onto it. It's not as simple as you go to the doctor, they help you have a baby, and boom, you come out pregnant. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
there's such a misconception around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And I do follow quite a few Instagram accounts. I think
Mhm.
because we had gone through IVF, on people sharing their stories, like, so real. And I feel
Yeah.
like if, you're going to go through that, there's also some really great documentaries out there. And there was a really good one on Netflix for a while that I actually asked our families to watch, because it was so similar to ours that I was like, I
Mhm.
don't think you guys understand. And please go through this, because your words are very hurtful.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, the words, and oftentimes well intentioned, but
Yes.
it's hard,
Hmm.
because they don't get it, or you get people who sort of know a little bit, but they're like, "You're just making a baby in a petri dish," and it's like, well, it's not that simple, and
Right.
it's not exactly what it's like. I mean, it is an aspect of it, but I feel like having families be educated, if you're going to support a couple through the process, educate them on how they should support you, and what are things to say, what are the things that are not so helpful to
Hmm.
say, and things to be mindful of when a couple's walking through overcoming infertility is important.
Yeah. I know specifically, we told our families, like, we're going through these are the dates. And so we would get phone calls like, how did it go today, how many embryos?
Mm,
But we also made boundaries, right? Boundaries are
right.
so healthy, mamas. Please make sure you're making those boundaries of, please do not ask, I will let you know when I'm ready. It will
Yes.
either come by email or text.
Yep.
which I know some people were very upset about. Like, what do you mean I'm in a group email? I'm like, well, you're all blind carbon copied,
Mhm.
right? It's fine. But, they were like, no, I want you to call me. I'm like, I can't get myself off the floor from crying. How am I going to be on the phone
Right.
going, I'm not pregnant again? Right? Like,
Right.
I don't want to make that
Right.
phone call. And so
Right.
I was a little upset that a few people were upset that
Yeah.
they got a text message about it. And I'm like, stop making it about you. Instead, ask
Mhm.
me, can you bring me dinner? Do I
Right.
need a coffee? Like, please try
Hmm.
to support me.
Do you need a crying session?
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah.
and I think those things are so much more helpful. And you're right, like families do get very touchy around this, and like who gets to know when and how. And it's like a couple has already lost so much autonomy going through this process. They've lost so much privacy going through this process. You have to respect their boundary that when they're ready to share, they will share it how they're ready to share. It's not your journey, it's theirs.
Mhm.
And they have every right to share how much, how little they want.
Mhm. Yeah. And I even know for our third journey, I said, I don't want anyone in the family to know because we also didn't live near family. We were 3 hours away. So it was also super easy to hide that from family
Yeah,
because you aren't going to Sunday night dinner or you aren't seeing
right.
them at church, right? You can miss stuff or not be around or miss work and nobody has any idea. So I did like that. And I did say, we are not going to share with the family that we are going through this again because I don't want the calls and text. But then we we found out we were pregnant right after grandma's funeral, and that's going into Christmas. This was
Okay.
like December 16th, 17th, something like that. Going into Christmas, and we were told by the nurse on the phone, you are pregnant, but your numbers are so low, you're going to miscarry this baby soon.
Mm.
So she goes, you do what you want, but I would not make a big announcement at Christmas.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like I was going into Christmas not excited, thinking I'm going to
Yeah.
lose this baby. And I just remember hating Christmas that year. Like I didn't want to be there. I wasn't happy. I bet I was in a foul mood to everyone. Um, but I felt like everyone was kind of weird because grandma wasn't there. And then we had to change our
Yeah.
Christmas plan, and I just felt like everyone was kind of off. So it was kind of perfect. But I just felt absolutely awful that we couldn't share because I was like, oh, this is like the perfect time to share at Christmas and you can surprise everyone. And so we didn't tell
Yeah.
anyone until January until we hit that 10-week mark. And usually with IVF, as long as everything's going okay, the baby's measuring okay, you've had so many ultrasounds, usually you get dismissed at 10 weeks to go back to your OBGYN. So when we were dismissed, we did end up telling our families.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to you, because you support mamas, which I think is so great. I wish I would have had you quite a few years ago. So, what are some recommendations that you give out to mamas when they're on this journey and they feel like nothing's working out?
I definitely have them do sort of like a lifestyle check first.
Mm,
And we look at different factors, like what stress factors are going on in their lives. Even if it's something that doesn't look overtly stressful, it can be stressful to the body. We explore their diet for both mama and the husband because we want to understand how their eating habits are impacting their fertility. And then we explore their hormones and their minerals. So I do hair tissue mineral analyses
mhm,
and I look at that to make sure everything's in order. And if they're like, let's say, copper toxic, how do we detox the body to get rid of all that copper or to make sure their hormones are balanced? So we look at their labs and sort of look at different areas that could use improving or to optimize. So that way their body is healthy for conceiving because we're laying a foundation to conceive. It's not, I don't want my clients to just get pregnant, but I want them to have healthy pregnancies
mhm,
and their babies to be healthy because it impacts generations. Like if their baby's healthy, then their grandkids are going to be healthy. And so we look at those different factors along with doing a home detox. So are you getting rid of the products that have like phthalates in it and those plastics, even down to like our tea kettles, right? Like we drink those great herbal teas, but if it's got BPA in it, then that's not helping. And like, what are you doing to get rid of any like magnetic frequencies in your home? Do you have a lot of like Wi-Fi things happening? And we look at where they live. Do they live in close proximity to like towers, and how they can help protect their home and their themselves? And husbands, like, are you carrying your phone in your pocket? And what are some things you maybe there's a special case you can use if you have to keep it in your pocket to so you're not being exposed to all those magnetic frequencies. And so we look at those different aspects of their home, water filters, to make sure too, if you're detoxing, there's no point in you detoxing if you're re-exposing yourself to these different things. And so I think that's a good place that I have couples start, is like, let's look at that as we continue to work to uncover the root of what's going on with you, and then figuring out based on that what path you should take.
No, I love that completely. And I felt like I started to jump on that train by the third IVF. Like, I wish there was almost like more education when you go to an IVF center, but it is very like medical and I hate to say money driven.
Right.
But I wish there was a lot more education on some of these things. I felt like I had to do the research myself. You know, just what you were saying, like I got rid of my plastics, I bought all glass.
Mhm.
You know, I just and these are things we still do in our family today. Like I have all glass. We still make all of our own laundry soap. Just
Yes.
because like when you look at, I hate to say Tide, you're like, oh goodness, like it smells
Yeah.
good, but like how many chemicals come with it smelling good, you know?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so I just love what you say. And specifically, I love seventh generation products. You know what you're talking about, like passing down from generation to generation. And so I didn't realize until COVID that seventh generation was to help with take out the toxics of your home, but also it should sustain us for 7 generations past us, which I just love.
I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. And it's all about finding the products. And like you said, even helping some families are like, well, I can't afford to pay $30 for laundry soap, let's say. But it's like, well, Castile soap is a good option and that has multiple uses. So it's about also supporting a family in what they're able to do within their means, and also not overwhelming them, because it is hard to see all these things you should be doing and get overwhelmed by them. And to me, it's like, we're taking it step by step. We're removing things and we're replenishing and nourishing your body, your home environment with new things. And it doesn't all have to be done at once. I'm still working on those things as well.
Yeah, I love that because it is hard to be like, oh, I got all of this nice Tupperware for my wedding. And you're like
Right,
pitching it out, right? And you're like,
right.
okay, I need to get glass, but like I can't afford $200 worth of glass, right? So, like, buy
Yeah.
a set of glass and then, then like pitch some of the plastic and make room for it. And then, for Christmas, ask for some more glass, right? So it's just, or like, we all love Bath and Body Works because it's so
Yes.
sexy, right? And so please get rid of your Bath and Body Works, right? And so use up what you have, or if someone gives it to you
Right.
for Christmas, like go ahead and use it, right? And then when you're out, then switch back to seventh generation or something else that
Mhm.
that you like instead. So, I like how you said we're taking baby steps, and I know we're trying
Mhm.
to get there quickly. And so if you want to get there faster, maybe like purge your house, right? But I also hate getting rid of stuff that's good too that we've already bought. So I am a big proponent of use up what you have and then buy new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've so enjoyed this chat today. I know this will help our mamas. I know most of you already have babies, but I did want to have Jazman come on today to talk about for some of our moms that are going through secondary infertility. That's such a huge thing. And I feel like it's even more burdensome on the families when you maybe have a toddler running around and you decide you want to expand your family. And I feel like that's really hard for moms, that you feel bad for wanting a second kid when you've already been blessed with one. But it's okay if you don't feel like your family's complete.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want mamas to know how they can connect with you and how you can support them on their infertility journey.
Sure. So you can connect with me at my website at www.edensnurturary.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Edens_Nurturary. And I would love to meet with you and discuss more about your journey so far and how things have been going, and discuss how we might work together and how I can support you by uncovering the roots, because I really think that's at the heart of fertility problems. And even if it is something that is not healable or it's going to take medical support, that's okay. We still have to prepare your body for pregnancy, whether that you're the man or the woman. We need both to be healthy. And if your journey does include, let's say, medical intervention and IVF has not been an option, or you've tried it in the past and it hasn't worked, there's still things we can work on. We can look through the history and explore ways to optimize your body, to optimize your health so that it'll be successful. And for some couples, their journey to their victory baby is what I like to call them, is through embryo adoption. So I help you explore that avenue and understand your options and how to prepare your body for a successful fetal embryo transfer.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I forgot to touch on that. So that is
That's okay.
well, you are the expert. Yeah. Good. Well, thanks so much again for coming on today. I super enjoyed this.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you loved this episode, it would mean so much if you would share it with another mama or post on social media and tag me. I want to personally thank you for wanting to help other mamas. You got this. I'm rooting for your breastfeeding journey.